Hi, everybody. This is Mark J. Ryan, and these are the 5 steps to a successful entrepreneurship. You are an entrepreneur. Let's learn and let's get some steps and tips that are going to teach you how to be even more of an entrepreneur. You know, many people over the years have told me that I'm an entrepreneur. Maybe some have told you that you're an entrepreneur. I've always wondered because I really never knew what an entrepreneur definition was. I kind of thought I was an entrepreneur. I'd go out and do things, create things, make businesses, make money, help other people create businesses and make money. But I really never knew what entrepreneur meant. As I was getting ready to do this video, my wife sent me an article from Inc. magazine, What's an Entrepreneur? The Best Answer Ever. And I read this article and I read it and I read it and I reread it. And I got to say, it is the best answer I've ever heard. And it made me understand that I am an entrepreneur. Of course, I'm a lot more than that. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a successful son, and many, many more things. However, there was something about incorporating that identity of an entrepreneur, taking it on, once I got an understanding of it, that made me more enthusiastic about being an entrepreneur. So what I want to do is kind of take you through the definition first and then go through the 5 steps that I've learned over helping people make millions of dollars, myself included, millions and millions of dollars by these details. There's a whole lot more details, a whole lot more steps, a whole lot more tips. We've got 10 minutes. I'm going to crunch an hour's worth of stuff, maybe 3 hours a day's worth of stuff into this 10-minute video and do the best I can with it. Let's start off first by what this definition is, the best ever definition I've ever heard of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. Now, the definition of entrepreneurship and what an entrepreneur is comes from Howard Stevenson. He comes from the Harvard Business School. Believe it or not, he defined this 37 years ago. When I got that, when I understood that, I realized how much of an entrepreneur I was. And again, we're going to go through the 5 steps that I've got here and show you from my past. And hopefully you can see in your past and in your present right now what you're going to do in your future. You're an entrepreneur too. Let's start off with what this means, the actual meaning or how I see it to mean, and see if you can incorporate it inside. Once you have it, then you can apply those 5 steps. So once you have this and you understand what you're being, doing, and having as an entrepreneur, you can then incorporate those 5 steps to help you, these 5 tips that will absolutely help you be the best entrepreneur that you can be, whether you're making DVDs, whether you're making ebooks, regular books, I don't care what it is. These 5 steps will greatly help you expand, something that I've learned over being in business for over 35 years myself. Okay, let's start to make some distinctions between the corporate you and the entrepreneur you, or somebody that you know is an entrepreneur. Start to notice that they do these things. So let's say here we've got a customer, and the customer is looking for A, B, C, D. It could be an ebook. It could be DVDs. It could be hard goods. It could be a regular book. It doesn't matter what it is. The customer is looking for something. Most of the people in the corporate world see what is there, what's available. And then they try to make project 1, 2, 3, 4 fit. Okay, this is what we have. Let's try to make this fit for what our customer needs. What the entrepreneur does, one of the things the entrepreneur does, is find out what this customer needs that's not being satisfied here and creates something new. So instead of trying to take this round peg into a square hole, what the entrepreneur does is find out what the customer needs, builds a round peg for a round hole. So that's one of the first distinctions of an entrepreneur. What an entrepreneur wants to do is take this here. An entrepreneur sees this as an opportunity to create something. So when he's selling things to other people to get people involved, whether it's people that work for him or banks or venture capitalists to get money, what this person, he or she, and I'll use he just for the purpose of this video, what he wants to do is sell his vision, sell his purpose. And what these people want to do is sell what they have. That's a different of the mindset. You want to find as an opportunity something that creates an opportunity that will perfectly fit here instead of trying to see what you have here and make it fit for that person. Now, the second thing an entrepreneur does, and this is probably going to be more towards you because you're starting from scratch. You're starting in the beginning. And one of the things, and they've done studies with entrepreneurs, has found out most of them come from poor backgrounds. Why? Because the opportunities, as we go back to the saying, and I'll put that up on the screen, when you have the opportunities there, we find resources as entrepreneurs with whatever is available in our environment at the time, with the best we can do. A lot of people will say, I have to have A, B, C, D before I can do this. And I catch myself doing this, and you may catch yourself doing this. But a true entrepreneur, what a true entrepreneur does is say, what do I have now and what can I do with it? Whenever I've created a product, whenever I've done something successful, what I've started with is what I had and did the best I could do with what I had. So let's say when I was younger, we didn't have much money, and my mother worked. A lot of times we got home from school, she was going 3 to 11, so she worked. So we had to create our own meals, and a lot of times we'd look up in the cupboard. There wasn't much there. And we'd put different things together. I remember one time there was a can of chichi beans there, and there's some Parmesan cheese, and I knew we had some salt and pepper, and so I kind of made a chichi. I didn't dump the water out. I kept the water in there, mixed it up, put some Parmesan cheese in there, salt and pepper. I still eat it to this day. I absolutely love it. Now, necessity created that. If I had something made for me or had it in front of me, I wouldn't have gone and looked on how to put resources together. Resources. Taking the resources that I do have. Not saying I'm not going to act, I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to create this product until I have everything in perfect order. No, what can I do right now, right at this minute with what I have? So what that definition is, it's a process. It's an actual process. It's not a thing per se. It's a process of what you do. Now, if you, let's say, have the ability to bake a cupcake or a cake or a loaf of bread, anything, any human being that has the resources or the capability can do that. But there is a specific process to baking a cake, a certain type of cake, a German chocolate cake. There's all kinds of varieties of it. However, there is a process. How many ingredients you put in there, how long you cook it for, depending on what elevation you're at. Do you want to use sugar? Do you want to use sugar substitutes? That's all part of the process, but there's content. The chocolate goes in there, the sugar goes in there, the eggs go in there, the flour goes in there, you need a pan. Those are content, but the process is taking all those pieces of content, adding it together, creating something new in your specific way. Okay, let's start to go through the 5 steps, and I'm going to give you some examples and stories as we go through these, that if you start to incorporate that in, you start to feel the entrepreneurship going through you, the process going through you, and you get excited because it kind of has a life of its own if you start letting it go through you and start incorporating some of these, and go out and read a bunch of books on entrepreneur. You've got Brendon Brouchard's material. You can go through there. This guy's an entrepreneur extraordinaire. He knows exactly what he's doing. First one is MacGyver. Be MacGyver. Be MacGyver. For those of you unfamiliar with MacGyver, it used to be a TV show back in I think it was the 80s and 90s. And this guy would get in situations mainly going to save people. And he'd get in situations and he'd have nothing. He might have a pocket knife. And he could take anything. He could take a belt. He could take a piece of wire. He could take a pencil. Next thing you know, he had a gun. Or he had a knife. Or he was able to get something that could cut a lock so it could get him open. He was looking around, finding what was in his environment, what resource he had at that present time that he could use. Years ago, when I was selling sunglasses, I had a sunglass business. As one of my business besides therapy and making DVDs and doing voiceovers and TV commercials and things like that, I went around to different trade shows around the country and sold sunglasses, protective eyewear, sportsman show, yellow glasses, brown glasses, and then sunglasses, depending on what kind of show I went to. And I remember this time it was selling sunglasses, and it was at the summertime, and we were coming up from San Francisco Bay Area, heading towards a little town called Weaverville, which is not far from Redding, California. And when I got there, the guy that I happened to be with, he said to me, he goes, this show is too small for both of us. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to go find somewhere else. Well, we'd been together for I don't know how many days hanging out. And I was like, okay, I'm stuck in a town that I've never been into, a part of the country I've never been into. What am I going to do here? So I started asking questions. I found out that there was another July 4th festival in a place called Mount Shasta, California, about 100 miles away. Knowing nothing about it, I got in the car and drove, found out who was in charge of the show when I got here. I got there. The guy had all the tent and equipment, so I had none of that. And I said, can I buy a space? And she says, yeah, we got 10 by 10 spaces. I can get you one. We're pretty well sold out, but we can get you one in the back of the event. So I said, I'll take it. And what I did is I started walking around town. I had nothing, but I'm in Mount Shasta. which is amazing because now we look 20-something years later. I used to come here every single year, and I now live here. I'm broadcasting from Mount Shasta. So it's one of the things that can happen to you when you start to use your skills as an entrepreneur. Let me get back to the story. So I start walking around town. The first guy I see is kind of like a hippie. He's got curly hair, and he's bebopping down the street and going down the street. And I walked up to him. I said, hey, can you do me a favor? He says, well, if I can. I said, I'm looking for a table. I just signed up for this show over here to sell my sunglasses at. But I don't have a table. I don't have a tent. I don't have anything. Where do I start? He goes, well, his name was Ron. He goes, well, I own a store down here. And he says, I don't have any tables. He says, but my wife's restaurant is right there. Maybe we can get one of her tables. And I'm a carpenter, so maybe I can help you build a little. So before you know it, like Stone Soup, he asked his wife. He asked other people. I had all kinds of people coming and helping me. I found resources in that town, the best I could do for the next morning, to get myself set up. So I had tables to cover that 10 by 10 booth to put out all the sunglasses. I had to go find tablecloths. I was going in back alleys. I was looking for different things, pieces of wood to put together so I could have this set up so it would look fairly professional. So again, resources. What are your resources? Go and find them. Be like MacGyver. Say, what's in my environment? If I can't afford it, if I don't have it already, if it's going to take me a while to accumulate that stuff, what do I have now? What can I make do with now? What can I make so that what I have at this present time will work? Start with something. I don't care what it is, because you'll start to then attract and draw in more to you, which will then let you purchase the things that you need along the way. Okay, number 2 is expand what's working. I'm going to give you another story of a show that I was at. I was at a show, and it was back in the Northeast, Syracuse, New York, I believe it was, and it was a gun show. And I sold protective eyewear to shooters, police officers, firemen, federal law enforcement, people that wanted it for shooting when they'd go out to the range to learn how to shoot. Well, I was at this show, and this guy came to the table, and I'd met him a few times to say hi, but I didn't know him that well. And he comes up, he goes, what's selling well? And I'm like, well, as somebody that's selling, I don't want to tell you, so next week or next time I'm here, you go figure out what it is. He goes, no. He goes, just tell me what's selling good. And I told him, I said, these are selling really good right now. And what he did is he started moving glasses on my table, moving them around and expanding this area. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know you. What are you doing? And he goes, look, he goes, if they're selling, you got to create an area, a bigger area, create a bigger area of what's selling. He goes, you've got a bunch of stuff you want to get rid of. It's not selling. You're making more room. You're just going to have a bigger space not to sell more. He goes, you got to get this stuff and expand the table. And I'm kind of looking at him, considering the idea. He goes, come here, come with me. Now, it turns out that this guy is a designer of chips for the military, for like missiles and things like that. He creates chips. He actually designs the chips. Excuse me. And he goes over and shows me his table of all the different things that he has. And he goes, here's what I mean. He goes, I come in this morning, I kind of put things equally along the table. Now think of all the different products you have, all the different things that you have to offer. How big of a space are you going to begin to create for it? And he says to me, he goes, this was this big this morning. How big is it now? He goes, 6 to 8 foot of space. I'm selling this particular product. Why? I don't know why. I can just tell you it's hot today. It's selling today. So what I do is then I expand. When they talk about multiple streams of income, you have multiple streams in. The thing is, you have multiple streams coming in. Which one is selling the best? What do people want that you have to offer right then and there? Try to figure it out. You'll never figure it out. That's what most of us did at these shows for years and years, trying to figure out what it was. You got to get to a point of letting the customer determine it and then say, this is the flow for today, for this weekend. Expand what you have. The sunglasses, I used to look through the catalogs and pick out all these wonderful sunglasses and put them on the table, and nothing. They wouldn't sell it. I'm like, okay. And then people come by and start buying them, and then I wouldn't have very many, and they'd sell out. I finally learned to say, okay, I'd call up the manufacturer. I said, Irene, what's selling? What is selling? She would tell me what part of her table was selling, that she had expanded on, that they bought. Oh, these are really hot, she'd say. She was from Taiwan. You got to get these, Mark. You got to get these. They're really hot. And so I started deferring for what I thought was going to be good for my customers to starting to expand the area for what my customers thought were going to be good for themselves. Again, I wish I had more time to go into this because I've got all kinds of stories. But let's go on to step number 3. Details. I remember a friend of mine, he was a lawyer, and I was doing some consulting work for him years ago down in Naples, Florida. And he couldn't wait to show me around. I got there at nighttime, during the day. He said, come on, let's jump in the car. And we started driving around Naples. And he was showing me all these big, beautiful, expensive, rich houses. And I had just come from some other places of Florida that weren't so nice. And as I was going through this, I kept looking. I'm looking at the flowers. I'm looking at the lawn. I'm saying, how well manicured this is. And it got me. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Paying attention to the details. Paying attention to the details, the small details, the flowers, where they were. No, it shouldn't be, that's okay. No, it's not okay. I want it here. I want it like this. What I found out is that people that have money, entrepreneurs, they pay attention more to the details. And wealth, there's something about your ability to pay attention to the details. I knew a guy that was an entertainer on cruise ships for a long period of time. And this guy was meticulous to details about what he wore, how he looked, how every hair, almost to the point of fault. I liked the guy in what he taught. He also brought around his own sound equipment, his own microphone, his own backpack, and he had it all encased in plastic bags perfectly in there. And he goes, I show up an hour before the show and I stay an hour after the show. And he goes, I make sure every detail is taken care of. This guy has broken all kinds of records on cruise ships for entertainment. You need to think about details, details, details. Number 4, reinvest. Reinvest in yourself, reinvest in your equipment. Years ago, I started off, I didn't have a whole lot of money, and I started buying a web camera years ago, probably 2004, 2003, 2004. And then I ended up spending like $800 on this piece of software, which I put on my credit card. I didn't really have. Come to find out years later, it was a piece of crap, actually. But what I was able to do with that software is make some commercials, and I was making them for fun. I was having fun with this, and I was sending them to my sister, my mother. I had a friend of mine who worked for Time Warner in advertising. He was big with ESPN. And so I started sending him little joke commercials, making fun of him and different things. And he calls me one day, he goes, look, he goes, how'd you like to do that professionally? And I'm like, yeah, I said, I think it'd be fun. I said, it seems like everything I'm starting to do with video is opening up again. Expand the working space. Not only do you expand it, but what else is expanding it? How is that expanding? So he says, look, I got this guy and he makes really good video commercials, but he doesn't really have the direction. And you got this NLP hypnosis stuff that, you're a trainer in that. Maybe you can make some commercials. I said, I've been waiting for him. I had been doing voiceovers for him at the station. So he knew of me and he knew my voice. And I kept trying to take the commercials they were writing and say, let me write these commercials. I can write them so the business is going to increase. And so one thing led to another. Next thing you know, I'm working with this guy creating commercials. Commercials so successful, one guy had a chain of furniture stores that were in his family for 60 years that he was getting ready to pass on to his son. I did a specific set, and we charged good money, got a lot of money from him, went up there, filmed it, did it, wrote it all, and he made so much money from an offer of selling his business, which he ended up doing, which he swore he wasn't going to do, from those commercials because his business went up. And he called me and thanked me and says, he goes, those commercials really, and his son was like, those commercials really helped us sell. He kind of was hesitant about it, but he goes, yeah, those commercials are what they brought in so much business, I got an offer. So think about what you're going to do when you reinvest. What did I do? I took the money from that. I started off, I had a webcam, and then this guy that I was working with, he says, I got the camera, it's got a scratch on it. You can use it inside, but you can't use it outside. I've reinvested. I've got high definition cameras now. I got lighting. I've helped people with these cameras, and with the cameras I've used along the way, make millions of dollars with products on video. I reinvested in myself in learning how to run this equipment, how to run it so it works. Yeah, I'm not an expert at it because I'm a trainer. I like training people. I like teaching people. However, I had to learn about video. I couldn't afford to pay people, so I had to make use of what I had and what I could do. And then I would get money and make money from it and reinvest it and buy a better piece of equipment, and probably spent $50,000 now on different video equipment. When I started off with wondering if I should spend this $100 on a little web desk cam, and it's worked from one thing to another. So reinvest in yourself and your knowledge of how you do this. When I have an editor now that I have for other people's videos that I make, I tell them how things need to be done because I invested in it and learned how it was done. I know how to work the camera. I say, okay, do this. I know how to tell them what to do and what I want for the products that I need to create for myself and for others. Reinvest in yourself. Reinvest in your business. And finally, the last one is don't quit your day job. Not yet. It's a great lesson I learned from, he was the vice president. It was a training. It was at a hypnosis trainer's training. I think I was training him to use it in his business. He was the vice president of Siemens in Holland. His name was Carl. And I did some coaching with him. He really enjoyed it. He said, now I owe you some coaching. He said, and I said, you know what? I said, here's the deal. At the time, I was doing a lot of therapy, and I wanted to increase my therapy business, but I also had the sunglass business going, which was paying the bills and doing well. And I says, I want to do the sunglass business, but I really want to kind of like let that go. And I was looking for a point to drop off the sunglass business and just do the therapy business. But because the sunglass business was seasonal and I had to pay for shows sometimes $1,000 8 months ahead of time, I had $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 out at different shows as deposits for next year because I continue to get better booths every year. And after a long conversation, he says, Mark, he says, don't quit your day job. You're going to have to do both. You're going to have to do both until it gets to a critical point where you're working so hard you've got to make a decision to choose one, but hopefully the one you want to go into really starts to make the money so you can do that. So there you have it, folks. Those are the 5 tips: entrepreneurship, finding those resources, finding the resources within you, finding the resources in your immediate environment, and finding the resources from your customers, because they'll tell you what resources they need, and you can give it to them by learning. Thanks. This is Mark J. Ryan. Hope to talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.